Welcome to Business Talk here on Business Tech, South Africa's largest business news website. And we've got one of the gurus in the small and medium-sized business space in the room today as vaccine rollout start to hit high gear in South Africa. And we start to see many businesses counting the costs over the last 18 months. We see the liquidation numbers. We're currently at just under 1,000 liquidations year to date. Pavlo Phitidis, Chief Executive at Aurik Business, a great pleasure to have you on the show. And I suppose the big question is, how do we stem the bleeding? And the fact is that the majority of business that is started out there failed to sell. And you've written about it. They close at great cost to the business owner, family, staff, the industry. What are these businesses missing that's causing them to fail?
Look, the scary stat, Michael, is the businesses I'm referring to in those stats. We're not talking startups. We're talking about businesses that are 10, 20, 30, 40 years old. Businesses that have done well to support their founders, have generated good income, have created jobs, have created some vibrancy within their industries and sectors. And despite all of that, the failure to sell is as a result of really the mindset around how we start and build businesses. When we start and build businesses, 97% of us do so out of necessity, and maybe 2, 3, 4% of us do so out of opportunity. It really is a privilege to start a business because of an opportunity instance or seizure that you might well have seen or identified. With regard to the majority of us, that necessity means that we need to start a business and get to cash flow very quickly. In other words, those businesses have to generate income for us. They support our own personal economy. They fund our businesses, because to receive business funding in South Africa in the early stages is near impossible, unless you've got friends, family, and fools, as the adage goes. And with that, we develop a certain set of habits around how we build our businesses. So despite the fact that you might have built a business which over 20, 30 years has given you really good income generation, businesses are not sold. They are built to be sold. And the way that you go about building a business is fundamentally, that will be sold, is fundamentally different to how you build a business to simply generate income. Many business owners don't recognize the switch, the difference, and what that engineered format needs to look like, because many of us build a business for 10, 20, 30 years and micro globally sell it within a 30 to 8-hour period of investment in the sale process.
Remarkable. And I see that, Pavlo, with journalists who lost their jobs through the pandemic, who managed to, out of necessity, land on their feet, start a PR business on the side, and are still going. They haven't built that business, that PR business, with a view to selling it. They're doing it to get by day to day. And I think in that, you really touched on such an important element there, is that the foundations for a business to be sold. What are the key factors that business should be looking on to ensure that they are sustainable in the one, but saleable in the other?
Look, I want to rephrase your question, because there's an even more exciting way to put it. And that is, I think, as a business owner, you should take a view on how you can have your cake and eat it at the same time. And what that means is build a business to generate income, but also build a business to develop and appreciate its capital value and transferability. So if we look at what an investor invests in or a buyer buys, a buyer effectively is looking to buy an asset. Now, you are very, very well versed on stocks and shares. If you see a share on the stock exchange for 100 Rand and you make a decision to acquire that share, you're hoping for 3 outcomes. The first outcome is that it will grow its income value. Over the next 5 years, hopefully it'll produce dividends of 20 Rand a year. So you've earned 100 Rands worth of dividends. That's your income growth. In a business, that's about salary, it's about your bonuses, it's about the dividends that the business produces for you. The next thing you want, Michael, is 5 years from now, you choose to sell the business, sell that share. It means you need to go into the market, and hopefully the share that you acquired for 100 Rand, you could sell for 200 Rand. you now have 100 rands worth of capital appreciation. And the third feature that makes that possible is that the share is sellable. In other words, there's another buyer out there looking at the share for 200 rand with the view to acquire an asset that will give them both income and capital growth. When we look at our businesses, we need to wear that shareholder's hat. And this means that we need to bake in the 5 levers of valuation and sale to make the business sellable. In the first case, if I'm acquiring your business, I'm asking as the acquirer, what makes you different? And here's the thing, within the medium enterprise world that we live in, it is viciously competitive. There are many, many businesses out there competing for the same slice of market that you currently are looking at acquiring. Most business owners turn around and say, well, my product is special, or my price is special, or the features in my service is special, or my service to customers is special. And the harsh reality is that none of those things are special, because any competitor, given a bit of time and a bit of money, out of necessity will compete to marry and match what you believe is your competitive advantage and nullify it. Positioning a business not centered on your product or on your service or on your price, importantly centered on which slice of that market do you want to serve, how intimately do you understand them in terms of how in serving them you solve a problem for them through creating a great experience, an experience including how they learn about you through your marketing, how they engage with you through sales, and how you service them through your operations. If you can show a potential buyer that you own a segment of the market because you've understood those elements and have a product or service at the right price to make the job happen, you've already got one additional basis point or one additional point to your value.
But obviously, but Pavlo, just on that point, but understanding it within a process or system inside your business, because it's no good if I, Michael Avery, am the one that understands that market, and when I leave, that information leaves with me.
Completely. So let's talk about how you take it out of your head and hands into the mechanics of the business. I refer to it as a system of delivery. And if you think about it, every business is the same. We all have to market to generate new leads and new customers and inquiries. We all then have to engage them with the view to sell and turn the inquiry into a client or a customer. Mm. And then we all have to service according to our promise and commitment in operations. Those aspects, Michael, are mechanical. They're activities which, when put into a sequence on a measured basis, can be designed to create that exact experience that would have otherwise come from your hand or your personality and make it a mechanical process of engagement with the market. Once you've got those two elements right, a well-positioned business that can be mechanically delivered again and again and again, you now have the opportunity to get your team in order for your clients to have the same experience again and again and again. And those are the 3 early stages that you have to get right if you're hoping to build a business that will get traction in the market, that will grow income, and will put a potential buyer in a position where when they look at you, say, well, without Michael there, he has a segment of the market that's responding well, he has a system of delivery to make it happen, and he has a team that drives it. You don't need to be there. Therefore, your business is transferable.
And I'm going to be able to take that 5 PE business that you mentioned earlier and sell it for 10 PE and get my double-digit multiple, which is really what you're looking to do. Now, how do you get to that point? You've mentioned those 3 core ingredients that really gives you that firm foundation and that base. How do you grow from there? I mean, what is the trick, especially in a market like this, Pavlo, where I reckon many are looking at the fact that consumers are depressed, the economy's in the toilet, nothing's growing, and I just really want to make sure that I'm surviving from day to day. How do you actually grow in a market like this?
Yeah, look, you know what? I don't believe in the survival mindset. I think it's an impoverished mindset. I think it diminishes you, your value. It diminishes your self-confidence. And, you know, Michael, I draw very extensively from martial arts. And I remember learning something in martial arts. The very first time, about 17, 18 years ago, when I stepped into a ring, and I was about to be punched on the nose, which is a very, very unpleasant experience. I remember my teacher saying to me, don't forget the principle of fair exchange. And I said, what's that? And he said, in every instance that you have an opportunity to put into practice your art through combat, you must be the best you can be. And be the best you can be unforgivingly and unapologetically. Because that will get the best out of your opponent. And when you're both playing at your best level, you're both teaching and growing through that experience with each other. So having set that aside, and back to the conversation at heart, once you've built your business with these three levers, a well-positioned business that's customer-centric and customer-facing and customer-built, with systems to make it all happen, and a team that lead and drive it, it releases the most precious commodity that all of us have available to us, and that is time. When I speak to most business owners, they complain about the fact that they don't have time to look for that growth you were asking about. And in this market, that growth comes through a number of avenues. In the first instance, we're finding the growth coming more and more out of corporate South Africa. Corporate South Africa is led extensively by CA qualified CEOs. CA qualified CEOs revert back to their training in an aggressive economy, which is what we have been prey to for the last 10 years. And that is all about thinning out costs. And the process of thinning out costs, which is the right strategy for a very large business, means that those big businesses will outsource more and more and more services that they previously would have insourced. And the SME environment thrives on that. The second part, if you consider how many businesses you compete with within your SME segment. So let's say, for example, in the baking sector, I happen to know this because I wrote a book on one of our key clients who's a baker. In the baking sector, there are about 4,800 bakeries across South Africa. It makes that sector very competitive in the small to mid-size segment. How many of them are thinking and working towards growth? And how many of them are thinking about purely survival? I can assure you that about 99.5% of them are thinking about survival. And what that means is because they don't have a growth mindset and rather have a survival mindset, immediately they're not looking at opportunities. If you have the growth mindset, you can eat their lunch, literally. And then the third and final factor, in this economy, given what we have been through, given what COVID has delivered, given what the most recent riots and unsettlement right across South Africa has delivered, there are opportunities to acquire smaller businesses, to acquire plant and equipment for 30 cents, 40 cents in the rand, to acquire stock for 5, 6, 7 cents in the rand, to steal away talent from companies that have got good talent, but are leaving that talent uninspired because those leaders aren't positive about their futures. It is the ideal time to settle in and focus your mindset and behavior around growth, because I've seen the evidence of it working in the last year and a half.
And history doesn't rhyme, but it certainly repeats. It reminds me of a conversation I was having with Stephen Kossop and Ian Cantor. They founded Investec as a small little bucket shop back in 1976. I mean, talk about politically fraught times. But Ian's retort was, when I asked him, well, you know, what made you found a business during such a time? He said, well, talent was cheaper. The mood was in the toilet. So I could get rent, at 40, 50 cents in the rand. And he saw an opportunity. But it is so much a mindset, isn't it?
It is a mindset. And I'll give you an example, Michael. What I'm seeing more and more of within the portfolio of clients I'm working with, is these are businesses that are 10, 15 years of age, 20 years of age. They're well established. They've all taken a hit in COVID. And if you recall, I had a few discussions with you around how to deal with the crisis when a crisis suddenly appears. In the first case, pre-COVID, in 2019, I was witnessing three forces of change that were creating crises across global economies and therefore across our businesses. The first was around climate change. The second was around technology. The rate and pace and speed of tech development is superseding our ability as human beings to understand it and embrace it. And then the third, which is such an interesting debate, and it's fairly nebulous, but we're seeing it play, is this idea of economic exclusion. Not income inequality, but economic exclusion. And I reflect back to 2016, 2017. I've got clients in the US. By far the majority of them have traditionally voted Democrat. When those elections came about, they voted Republican. And they voted Republican because of the phrase quoted by the former President Trump, drain the swamp. And what it meant for them is that the very comfortable, shiny relationship between very big business and very big government needs to be broken. The SME sector pays its taxes. It doesn't have the ability or opportunity or time or resources or skills, quite honestly, to constantly improve and make their businesses tax efficient. And yet, when you look globally, some of the biggest businesses in the world pay the least level of taxes. And those taxes that we pay fill the coffers of government, and yet the very large corporations and very big government enjoy the tenders together. And it was creating right across the world a sense that the playing field is no longer perceived to be fair. People were getting annoyed with the fact that they were working harder and harder, longer and longer hours, carrying more and more risk, but not generating a commensurate return. And I saw that as a main feature that would start destabilizing the environment. COVID then came to create the crisis of note, which was universal. And COVID just simply then exposed those three levers I'm referring to in very real terms. And the point that I'm making is this. We have no choice but to learn as business owners to sail in storms. Because post-COVID, whenever it may end, I can assure you already, right now, today, there are wildfires raging across many countries in the world. There have been floods raging across many countries in the world. There has been cybercrime at a level that has never been before stated. And yet we're seeing protests equally right across the world. This is the environment that we have to learn to trade in. And those of us that embrace this as a warrior would a battle and learn to lead and grow a business in that environment will find ourselves constantly in the front foot, for I can assure you the next crisis and the next one and the next one. It is a mindset that eventually turns into behavior.
Absolutely. And, having spoken to you in the past about your various business turnarounds through your books that you write about, that's something that you really grasp very early on. The fact that the pessimist complains about the wind, the optimist expects it to change, but it's really about being the warrior, being the realist and raising the sails to say, well, how do we take advantage of those new winds that you mentioned that are blowing through the world of technology, of climate change, of this economic exclusion. So I think with that rallying call, Pavlo, I'm going to go out there and start my side hustle and hopefully turn it into a great asset of value through what has been an unprecedented crisis. But as always, a great pleasure chatting to you. And thanks for coming on to our new platform here on Business Talk and Business Tech. Take care.
Wonderful, Michael. I hope to speak to you again. You take care. I'm going to be watching you. And if you have not progressed, I'm going to be whipping you.
Oh, challenge accepted. Pavlo Phitidis, the founder of Aurik Business.